Hi, welcome to Startup Out of the Box, a regular podcast about startups with Marco Silva and Vitor Domingos.
On this episode, on Easter Sunday, we're going to discuss about early stage startups that face severe contraction. We're also going to talk about the WeWork that isn't working at all, and also how to manage your team with social distancing. So, on the first topic, because this is our second recording. The first one was so bad that we had to do this twice. So first of all, happy Easter to everyone. So we are doing this on Easter Sunday because we are dedicated to our own podcast, or actually don't have
we have
anything
nothing else to do.
Exactly, nothing else to do. So on early stage startups that face severe contraction, most of them, so we're going through a very turbulent crisis, a pandemic, then it's going to go probably into recession, and there's a bunch of early stage startups that don't have don't have enough money. Some of them are furloughing, some of them are just doing layoffs. They can't get any money throughout the rest of the year, so they can't start. They can raise money, and that's going to be an issue, right? For many of them.
I'm involved in a few groups of startups, and the common conversation theme around all of them, it's really like most of the companies and the businesses they move the mentality from growth to just trying to survive. They're trying to figure out what they need to do to just ensure that the company survives the next couple of months. It's not about growing anymore. It's not about making huge amounts of profit. It's just making sure that they're there when all of this ends and they can continue and maybe then focus again about growing by the end of the year. Yeah, so most of them are already giving up on 2020. It's just like, let's just make it work. VC wise, most VCs have stopped doing investments, but some of them also continue to do it. So there is still VC money out there. You just have to look harder for it. So it's still happening, but the volumes are much lower than a normal period of time. And some startups are feeling it big time.
They are. I just got the news from a Portuguese startup that had to lay off some 35% of their employees, and last year they raised a lot of millions, which doesn't make any sense. But because they said that they had to lay off because they couldn't. It's going to be hard for them to raise money this year. So raising money is not actually a business model. They actually need to have a business model so that they can actually keep their people on the payroll and actually operate. But that's going to be hard for them. And most of the startups that were planning to raise money this year, they're going to face this kind of severe disruption as well. That's the immediate disruption. Obviously, on the long term, is going to be a severe contraction on the market, even the VC market, which brings me to the point of, do you think that governments should bail out companies, should bail out startups in this particular case?
I think governments should provide some help to companies at this time, like zero interest loans, some better social financing to the employees. Like, for example, in the UK, government is paying up to 80% of the salaries of these companies that can't afford their employees anymore. So in a way let's help you out with during this 2-3 months to ensure that these people are not fired, they're not unemployed, they still have some money to support their family during this times, and companies can still at least keep their doors open. I think that's important to support the small businesses, including startups, because they are a big chunk of the economy, and it's not like they have millions in the bank just waiting for situations like this, like big organizations that do things properly.
Well, in France, they are trying to. So the French government is trying to help some startups with specific loans and stuff like that. So I get that that some help will go to them, probably around with getting, as you just said and I mentioned, the loans, access to some EU funding, or helping their employees if they have to actually do the furlough, how to help them to stay at home and actually have part of the salary. So if that's gonna if the government should help them on raising money in the future, I don't think that's going to be a good idea, because we don't have. First, we need to look through the society and citizens, and then look at companies. I get the point, but there are some governments around Europe, Germany, France. They have some specific supports for startups. Here in the UK, we don't. In Portugal, I don't recall seeing anything related to that, which is going to be a tough one for them.
No, Portugal barely has any support for startups or companies. So
exactly. Oh well, the usual. Let's change topic for the second topic, which is WeWork isn't working. So a lot of stuff in the news regarding WeWork. Last year they had a major investment from SoftBank. They spent all of that investment in just 3 months with layoffs and getting new property to set up new co-working spaces. And this year, because everyone is working from home, it's going to be complicated for them to actually make up some money. And obviously the situation with their previous CEO, which is now a few billions short of because of the investment that SoftBank pulled out, it's going to be tough for them to operate, right?
Yeah. So well, the ex-CEO, he already has a few billion from the bailout last year. And most of the money that SoftBank was going to inject now was going to buy shares from current employees and people and other investors. And a lot of people was kind of expecting that money, kind of to ensure salaries, to ensure the future of the company, to be able to sell their shares to SoftBank so they can have an extra money set aside to pay mortgages and things like that. And SoftBank just said like last week or 2 weeks ago, just pulled the rug out of it and said, nope, we're not going to continue this process anymore. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of a big slap in the face, considering that WeWork was the beautiful shiny unicorn from SoftBank. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen, considering that they have less space than Regus. It's Regus, right? No, Regus is HR.
No, it's not. It's not co-working, but it's renting spaces and office space.
Office space, yeah. It's like something like Regus. It's 10 years or 15 years old, has less employees than WeWork, and has a massive profit per person. And WeWork has more employees, less locations, and a massive, burnout comparing to it. So it's like, okay, maybe.
Well, because the previous CEO wanted to build WeWork as an ecosystem, right? So it was a bunch of stuff that he wanted to put forward. So it's not just the co-working space, but actually more stuff. And as we've seen, it's really tough on today's day and age to keep these things going, and especially in the near future when people need to keep the social distancing. And it's going to be a hard one, because we've seen in some co-working spaces that everyone is cranked up, but there's a lot of kind of 4 people in just one table because they want to max the space. I think that's going to be an issue. So they need to optimize and maybe have less people in each office. It's going to be a tough thing to see. So I'm not sure if actually WeWork is working at all, and I'm not sure if in the future that thing, the whole business model, will actually work. It's not.
I think it will work. It just needs to scale down a bit and focus on, okay, this is a business and not depend on investment money. And okay, that's not because we have millions in the bank, we can do whatever we want and do flowers and schools and free beers. Like when I go to a co-working space, I don't care about free beer or whatever. I know that okay, do they have coffee? Do they have tea? Like something like that. There's a quiet place for me to work. Is the internet connection good? So that's kind of like the important things. All the rest, it's nice to have if possible. Mm-hmm. But it's not why people go to co-working spaces. So I think that kind of like WeWork and others like WeWork, they just need to focus on the business and what they're doing and what is essential to survive.
Exactly. So which brings me to the last topic, which is how to manage your team while social distancing. Your team is already working for the past years in kind of remote work. I would assume that because of this pandemic, nothing major changed in the way that you actually work.
So team-wise, most of the work hasn't changed. Like the team is still working remotely. they work from home. So the big changes are more people that have kids now have a kid at home, so that does affect a bit how you prioritize your day, what work you do during the day. So that's the big change. But of course, not being able to go out, have a coffee, or go out at night, or do what you would do in a normal week. Of course, that does have an impact on the teams, like more on mental health than on day-to-day work.
Which exactly. So the article that we are showing on the screen right now is from the Harvard Business Review, and they talk about they present a bunch of topics on how to manage the team while social distancing. So I'm just going to talk about some of them, and then probably get your feedback if you want to. So I think that the first couple of them is kind of obvious, right? So we need to reset our expectations when it comes to manage the team whilst in this period of the pandemic, and we need to keep the social distancing. We need to stay in regular touch with each other. Makes sense, right? So communication. Support the continued learning, but keep it short. So don't have a lot of self-learning or teaching or training courses, but that take a long time, but have them more frequently so that the team keeps engaged and keeps also learning. Funny enough, a few weeks ago I posted on LinkedIn that saying that if people throughout this period of social distancing, they don't invest in their employees by doing kind of hiring or training them whilst they're at home, then the struggle to get back to the market and get back to the normal kind of working life, it's going to be even harder for them. On other topics, so assign buddies and peer coaches to add a layer of mutual support. So do this kind of talk to your co-workers and colleagues and support them throughout their activities. As you mentioned, some of them have kids. It's really tough to have kids at home and keep the work going, especially when you or your husband or wife are also at home and they need to take turns to take care of the kids. So it's really tough and really complicated with that. So do this kind of peer coach, which is good to have. One thing that they point out, and I think it's quite important, is because when we're doing meetings and stuff face to face at the office or a coffee shop or something like that, it's really easy to read the other person because she's just facing us, and it's really easy. On video calls, on phone calls, then we need to interpret the tone and the voice of the other person. So that thing is really important. People need to understand how to do that. Because sometimes people we don't because we're not seeing them face to face. It's really hard to understand and to see what if they are really saying the things with if they really mean what they say, or if they're just making a joke. So it's really important to the tone and the voice of this.
Especially like it's easier to understand the tone and the voice than written. You can say
yes.
A lot of times people just writing and they misunderstand each other's writing. So like having phone calls and video does help a lot, but please don't make phone calls and videos every hour of the day. Give people a break.
Exactly. Work normal hours. I think that's really important. Get out in the morning, take a shower, go to kind of work and start your video.
Yeah, but work. It's work from home. It's not work every hour of the day.
Exactly. It's not 24/7. So a few more. So where was I? Yes. Model optimism and drain the team of fear. So because most of them, they're going to be home. They're going to be afraid of what's coming, and if the company is going to survive, or the job is going to survive, or the work. So it's really important for everyone to actually try to understand individual fears and also talk them through. So one of the things that here in the UK immediately people start talking when they started to do the social distancing is the mental health. So take care of that. Do breaks, do meditation, whatever you need to do. Read books, but take care of your mental health, which is really important in today's day and age. And the Harvard Business Review focus on this. The other two is about communication and engagement. So Update your team often, even if there's no update. So keep them engaged, keep them in conversation. As you mentioned, create Slack channels or Teams channels or whatever, but keep everyone in the loop. Share memes, share different backgrounds on Zoom, on exchange yourself to a potato on Microsoft Teams. So there's a lot of stuff that you can go and can engage and try to remove this kind of stress levels from your team, because that's really important, and take care of them. So it's kind of some interesting topics from Harvard Business Review, and I think that everyone should pay attention to that. Any comment on your side, Marco?
No, I think that covers everything.
Good. So today's episode was just a bit different because I'm doing kind of live recording and editing at the same time. So it's interesting. Either way, this was episode.
Let's see if this time works.
Exactly. Let's see if this time works. So either way, this was episode 26 of Startup Out of the Box, and have a happy Easter, and we'll see you guys again soon. Bye.
Bye. See ya. Então, vê lá. Como é que isto ficou agora?